Our regularly scheduled board meeting. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if there are no changes, I'd like to seek an adoption of the agenda. Motion?
So moved.
Second, Goodburn.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. I will, the next three items, 1.4, 5, and 6, are all agenda minutes for approval. So I will seek a motion to approve all three.
So moved. Owsley?
All right, thank you. Second?
Hembry, second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. It brings us to the Superintendent Report 2.1. Dr. Hubbard.
Yes, thanks. So we are so glad to have our Shawnee Mission educators back to start the school year. New team members arrived last Tuesday. They toured the district, attended professional learning sessions, and had a chance to interact with other new colleagues. We had a blast welcoming and celebrating them with the help of a band, cheerleaders, and mascots as they started and concluded the week. As of Friday, continuing teachers have returned and they are taking part in pre-service. We thank all of these educators for what they're doing to get our schools ready for our students. They are such an important part of what makes us one Shawnee Mission. We were thrilled to welcome individuals to the CAA who are interested in becoming a part of our team recently. Shawnee Mission hosted a job fair for non-teaching opportunities since last time we had a meeting. This fair gave people a chance to learn about non-teaching opportunities, paraprofessional, food service, custodial, information and communication technology positions, and more. We will include a link in the recap for anyone who may be interested in learning about these potential opportunities. We are so excited to hear of a national recognition presented to several of our schools. National PTA recognized Broken Arrow Elementary PTA, the Mill Creek Elementary PTA, and the Shawnee Mission East High School Parent-Teacher-Student Organization as National PTA Schools of Excellence for 2021 through 2023. This is an honor for schools who demonstrate a commitment to supporting and recognizing partnerships between PTAs and schools. These partnerships enrich the educational experience and overall well-being for our students. They represent 3 of only 4 schools in Kansas to receive the award and make a powerful statement about the engagement the community has with their schools. So congratulations to these 3 schools. Speaking of PTA, the Shawnee Mission Area Council PTA, SMAC, will soon be opening an important resource for our community. The SMAC PTA Clothing Exchange opens on Thursday, August the 18th. The exchange offers gently used clothing and shoes from infant to adult sizes and is open to individuals who live in our boundaries. Donations from community members are also welcome. We will include a link in the recap for anyone wanting more information. It's been a really busy summer of construction in Shawnee Mission, and I want to share just a few highlights. This week, we are so excited to be opening the new Westwood View Elementary School. This is the first of 5 elementary rebuilds made possible by the $264 million bond approved by the voters in January of 2021. We are excited as the Westwood View community holds their back-to-school events in the new space, and families and students get their first look at the new Westwood View Elementary School. Among other completed renovation projects this year, Shawnee Mission Northwest features a new commons area and restroom renovations. Shawnee Mission North has new weight room and restroom renovations. There is also a new 3-story addition opening up at students at Indian Woods Middle School. The summer also allowed for HVAC replacements, playground updates, and furniture replacements in various buildings across the district. Thank you to everyone, especially our operations and maintenance team members and our construction partners who have worked so hard to get us ready for the first day of school. We are also thankful to our community members for making all of this possible. I want to give a mitigation update. We continually work collaboratively with Johnson County Department of Health and Environment in response to and management of all communicable diseases. We are not the public health experts, so we rely on their public health expertise for guidance and direction. The previous mitigation procedures that the district has had in place for the management of COVID-19 expired at the end of June. We have always had plans in place related to infectious disease following state statutes, and specifically Kansas State Statute 65118 and Kansas State Statute 65122. Our experience with COVID-19 has made those plans more explicit and visible. We will continue to have the following processes in place. We will promote vaccinations among students and staff. We will support students and staff that choose to wear a mask. We will exclude persons with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 infections for 5 days, and everyone must be symptom-free to return. We will recommend persons with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 infection who return on day 6 to wear a mask through day 10. As is the procedure with all infectious diseases, we will work closely with JCDHE regarding potential mitigation measures related to the spread of COVID-19 and any other infectious diseases. Enhanced air filtration continues to be a priority to ensure an optimal learning environment for all, and the nurse's office will continue to maintain HEPA air scrubbers at this time. And lastly, we are so excited to welcome students back this week. It is one of the best times of the year. So many plans and preparations are in the works here in the district. We'll include a link in the recap of back-to-school resources to continue to support families as they prepare. In the midst of it all, I wish everyone a great start to the school year.
Thank you for that update. Let's move on to board reports 2.2. Ms. Hembry, do you have any updates for SMAC PTA or the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation?
I'm glad that Dr. Hubbard mentioned the clothing exchange coming back online soon. I was going to share that. And then also the fall breakfast registration is now open for the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation. That's at smef.org. The event will be September 22nd at 7:30 a.m. Back in person at the Convention Center.
Thanks. My guess is the clothing exchange might be looking for volunteers to help with the reopen.
Always looking for volunteers, yeah.
All right. Okay, Mr. Stratton, any update on KASB Board of Directors?
The Board of Directors meets later this month for the next board meeting. One of the items will be to put together dates for fall meetings, the regional meetings, so I'll let you know as soon as we do those. And then lastly, a reminder, November 11 through 13 is the convention. I think we've got 5 of us registered for that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Owsley, anything on KASB Legislative Committee?
We are meeting on the 27th.
Okay. So do we need some work on legislative platform prior to that meeting?
This is my first year on the committee, so
Yes.
I don't know if I need to be bringing our set platform by that time. I think last year you went prior to us having a finalized platform, and then we adopted our platform after that. So we have a orientation this Thursday, and I'll probably know more, and then I can get you that. So if we have to have our platform ready prior to the meeting, I don't know that we're going to get that done,
Yeah.
but I don't think we do.
We'll operate
If
with
that
our
helps.
existing platform.
Yeah.
Right, okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, KASB Nominating Committee, Ms. Borgman.
Yeah, we meet on the 20th, and there are a group of us, 15 of us from across the state, and we will be listening to interviews for KASB President-elect.
Great, thank you. Okay, Ms. Borgman, anything on Policy Review Committee? Ms. Goodburn? Oh my God, the B and the G, I don't know what it is.
We're going to meet on August.
Phonetics, I need phonetic awareness. Yes, please. Could we have a little intervention?
We're going to meet on August 15th and discuss, I'm sure, some of the updates that KSB provided to us over the summer. And so this will be our first meeting of this school year.
And what's that date again?
August 15th. It's a Monday, I believe.
Okay.
At 3 or 3:30.
Okay.
I think it's
Thanks.
3:30.
Okay, and then back to you, Mr. Stratton for Finance and Facilities? No update? Okay, and Ms. Boyd-Nerona, anything on real-world learning?
Actually, today, we met collectively, I don't want to steal Laura's thunder with the presentation later today, with corporate partners and the educators at the Shawnee Mission West for a luncheon and panel, which was fabulous. I'm going to let Laura talk more about that, and then I'll explain more in my final notes.
Great.
Final comments.
Thank you so much. Okay, I believe that concludes board reports. And that brings us to 3.1, security update. Dr. Hubbard.
Yes, so earlier in the spring, we discussed that Chief Schmidt and Dr. Gilhouse would be meeting with the municipalities on regards to our SRO contracts and just safety and security as a whole. So we just want to give you a brief update. Even though we did the full report in the spring, we just thought it would be important as we started school just to have a brief update in regards to safety and security. So I will pass it over to Dr. Gilhouse.
Thank you. Our top priority is and always has been the safety and security of our students and our staff. This year is no different. We continued this year to revise, update our security and safety procedures. And you'll see later on in the board meeting action item 7.04 is just one more additional added security feature that we hope you will support this evening. We have several other things that we have customized and added to for this school year. The presentation that you're about to see with Officer Laughlin and Chief Schmidt is the same presentation that Officer Laughlin and myself shared with all of the building and district administrators during the administrative retreat this year. This information was also passed on to all of our teachers, classified and certified personnel this year in the first 4 days, any time during those first 4 days of the pre-service before our school year starts. So I'm going to turn it over to Officer Laughlin and Chief Schmidt and kind of chime in as we go along here, sharing with you what we have in place. We feel very good, but it's always a challenge, and we have to continue to prepare every single day to keep our kids safe.
Thank you, Dr. Gilhouse, Dr. Sinclair and board. We appreciate the opportunity to come back and talk just a little bit about what we do on a daily basis, some of the upgrades that take place on an annual basis. So I don't want to read the PowerPoint to you, so I'll just kind of go over and highlight those. If you have questions about any of it, please let me know. We will cover those. The police department, we're a small unit, but we're all state certified law enforcement officers, average of about 28 years of experience per officer. Most of them are retired, as myself, from other agencies and left at the command level. We're very diligent about making sure we have the right people for the right job. So it's not anything we take lightly. We would rather have that position remain open until that right person is selected. I think I'll start with a lot of the technology things that we do. Officer Laughlin covers a lot of that, and this is an opportunity, if he'll stand up. This is our new uniform this year. We're going to a softer, more approachable look. It's pretty common. We call it a soft uniform. It's commonly, did I miss something?
Well, I just wanted to give everyone.
Oh, it's nothing new, but we think it's more approachable, especially in the elementary levels. We're giving it a try this year, so you'll start to see the officers make that transition to the new uniform. So I'll let Philip talk about our technologies.
Good evening. Thank you. We have an operations information center that's here at CAA. Our dispatcher is there, and he coordinates all of our activities. We also have a campus security officer at each of the high schools, and they are at the front entrance and help vet the high school visitors to the building.
Is the clicker not working, Philip? That'd be great.
The officers at the front of these, at the control centers at the high schools, the 5 main high schools, vet the visitors to the office, and also have access to the cameras so that they can also monitor the activity and any alarms that occur at the middle schools or elementary schools in their feeder pattern. They also monitor local public safety activity and severe weather threats and anything that could affect the operation of the school. Communications. All of our schools have two-way radios for on-campus communications. And each school office has an emergency radio that can contact us directly. This radio is also interoperable with the Johnson County First Responder radios. And we also use this to communicate instantly with all of our buildings, any emergency message we have to get through, such as tornado warning or other emergency that the schools need to be aware of. Raptor Technologies is our visitor management information software that we use during academic hours. Any visitors that come into our schools will be stopped at the office, identification will be obtained, and they will be run through Raptor. Raptor checks the national database for sex offenders and also state databases. And we can also add custom alerts in there if an individual is not welcome on campus or has been banned, or there's some type of caution or flag that we need to put on that individual, then we can do that in Raptor. Raptor also has 3 panic buttons that they can incorporate instant notification to the building and to district office if there's some type of emergency. Sprigio is our online bully report system that we have been using for quite some time. You can make a report online or through the app. The administration receives this information and then follows up on it appropriately. We also have officers specifically trained in threat management, threat assessment. If there's any emergency situation that would affect the operation of the building or could be a threat to the building or the operation of the school, we will bring those officers in with the parents, with mental health professionals, our administration and staff, and collaborate together so that we can try to get that resolved as best as we can.
I would add on that, we also, with social media in this day and age, many times in the evening, we receive threats or inappropriate comments that may challenge the safety of our building. At that point in time, we lean out to Chief Schmidt, Officer Laughlin, any one of our district personnel that in turn reach out to the municipalities, and those threat assessments take place that evening before those students attend school the next day to make sure that we continue to be safe, and if it's not, they will not be at school. So the threat assessments can be a 24/7 process.
Exactly, and that can come in through Sprigio, that can come in through several sources, but Sprigio is the main source of those that we receive at night. I want to cover the building status. It can be in several different statuses. A normal school day is restricted access. So the bell rings in the morning and all the doors in the district buildings automatically lock and go to a lock status. And then anybody that needs to get in the building past that as we come in the morning has to be checked. They are normally bringing something to the office, but that's normal access. We're going to school all day, and we're in a restricted access. The next one is a lockdown. A lockdown takes place normally because of something else in the vicinity or in the community. It may be Westridge goes to a lockdown status because of something taking place at Oak Park. So we work closely with the police department to maintain constant contact during those lockdowns on what they're doing, what they want us to do, and any kind of emergency information can be passed on to the cabinet, to the administration in that building, and anybody else on that chain of managers that needs to have that information. But those are normally outside of the building. We are still teaching business as usual inside. We just restricted the access of anybody leaving the building or coming to the building. An officer is automatically dispatched to the building, and he remains there or she remains there till that threat's been eliminated.
One of the best examples I can give you of a lockdown, I think it gets taken out of context an awful lot, is let's say you were at Westridge Middle School, right there on 95th, across the street from Oak Park Mall. If there was any type of disturbance over at Oak Park Mall, the police had to show up. If there was something occurring across the street, we would lock down Westridge Middle School to make sure that we were safe. Send an officer out there, nobody would come or go from Westridge until the situation across the street was handled. So the administration is in constant contact with our police department, who's in contact with the municipalities, and then we send information out through communications to our parents at home. So all of these things are very well communicated, but a lot of times when you hear of a lockdown, for the most part, it's because of a disturbance in the neighborhood and not necessarily something wrong within our building. So just to give a little context to that.
Thank you. Code red just means there's an active threat in the building or on the campus. Those situations are extremely, extremely rare, but those are part of the drills that Dr. Hubbard will talk about in a few minutes. The evacuation and reunification, buildings all in their plan have an evacuation location that they know to go to. We respond to that, and reunification takes place at that location off-site. That can be because of a gas leak. The electricity's out. We may move to another building. Usually man-made situations are what would cause us on a normal situation to have to go to that
Correct.
plan.
And one of the things we did add this year with our evacuation is a primary and a secondary site. So we want to make sure we've got two sites at opposite ends of a campus, depending upon what a possible threat could be. We don't want to send them to, if a gas leak is on the south side of campus, that's where the evacuation point is. Obviously, we're not going there. So we've created an additional evacuation point at each one of our facilities. And the reunification is a challenge. We're continuing to update that this school year. I think we learned a lot from the Olathe East scenario last school year with that reunification process, and it can be very challenging. So we're going to continue to get better at that plan and perfect that plan, working with building administration and our police force and the municipalities this school year.
Thank you. The perimeter security and open doors is something I want to touch on. Well, let's go, let me back up. This next slide, Dr. Gilhouse, you probably want to address this.
Sure.
This is kind of what we just went over, but I'll let Dr. Gilhouse explain this.
So this is an emergency procedures that Officer Laughlin, myself, and Chief Schmidt worked on this year with the input from the ELT and cabinet. This is going to be on an 11 by 17 poster laminated in every single one of our classrooms so that we can continually refer to this. It's the basics. If, in case of a crisis in Shawnee Mission School District, we're either going to lock down, we're going to evacuate, or we're going to have a code red. So those are the three things that we've tried to simplify. And if you look at this, it gives very clear directions and process. And these were things that the principals reviewed with staff, and staff will review with students when the timing is right as well in an appropriate manner in case of any of these three things would happen in a real scenario. So these are the things that we will be practicing drills on. So the state requires us to have 4 fire drills, 2 tornado drills, and 3 crisis drills. Our plan this year is to have a drill for a lockdown, an evacuation, and a code red. All right, so I think there's some miscommunication somewhere. I think some people believe that a code red drill is where police come in and it's like some type of active crisis. That is not the case, all right? So the information is shared with staff, students, and we practice a very short drill to make sure that we're safe. God forbid any type of intruder or anything ever came into our buildings in an emergency situation.
Dr. Gilhouse, are these announced or unannounced?
So this year we are going to announce them. We've gotten some feedback, and we think it's very reasonable feedback to communicate with our parents when we are going to do these 3 crisis drills. That's just what we're going to do. So we think it's a great communication piece. To be honest with you, most of the kids, especially the younger ones, if you do a code red, they go home and tell their families anyway, which is great. But the bottom line is there's nothing to hide and it's full transparency. So we will be communicating with our families before we do these 3 crisis drills this year.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So on the lockdown drill, just to be clear, like the kids are really just in the room still
That is
being
correct.
educated. It's just that teachers lock the doors and then they continue as they're going. So
That
that's a
is-
very low stress situation.
That is correct.
And then on the evacuation drill, it's somewhat similar to like a fire drill where you're exiting the building.
Yes and
going in a
no.
line,
So
or-
a fire drill, you have designated places to go. In an evacuation drill, you send the whole student body out to a certain portion of the campus. So it will either be the primary or the secondary. So the locations of where you go on those evacuation versus a fire would be different, but the staff know where to go and the kids follow them.
Thank you.
Thank you. The perimeter security is the next little part I want to touch on. Extremely important for us. The CSO at each high school and the operations center here receive an alarm when a door is propped open. It may be propped open with an item. It may be someone has let someone in. There's a photograph taken of that instantaneously. It goes to the officer assigned to that sector of schools. It goes to the administrator of that building. It goes to myself and to Officer Laughlin. I usually pass it on to a few other people to make sure they know that we're looking at it, but those are investigated immediately to determine what the factor was in that prop door.
Another item to note for this year is that any defective doors or locks will be reported immediately to O&M, and they are going to make that a high priority. That is the message that what the administrators were told, to make sure that it's a priority. If the doors or locks are malfunctioning, it needs to be reported at once.
Only thing to add on that is all of our doors, as of a couple of years ago, lock on the inside. So when we call any type of drill, the teacher just has to simply go over to the room and push the button on the inside. So there's no more of finding your keys, opening the door, going outside to lock it. It's very user-friendly. Be done in, 3 seconds, 4 seconds.
That's great. Dr. Hubbard mentioned meeting with the local law enforcement. We did that. It was very productive. A lot of what we talked about is making sure that we're all keeping track of the same data and that we're all working in unison to make sure that we're doing things similar in each situation. Statutes and policies dictate most of that, but we want to make sure that our partners know what we do in an emergency or on a regular call, and vice versa. We all know what everybody's doing. We talked about communications. We talked about changing some of the data that we currently receive. Mixed, we're going to separate, but anyway, short side of that is we all agreed that the data needs to look alike from everybody and that it arrives at about the same time so we can compile it, get it to Dr. Gilhouse and Dr. Hubbard, who can distribute it further to the board. I think I just have a couple little things left to look over. Training is the next thing. We train every year. We train on any of these situations. We train on Code Red. We train with lockdown. We also train outside of the district with other law enforcement agencies. This year, my training emphasizes in mass casualty investigation and recovery. So I'll be spending, I do start that the end of this week, and then some more at the end of the month with the FBI. So there's a lot of that training taking place, along with our required 40-hour certification that the officers receive every year, from bias training to firearms. We try to cover the gamut and make sure we're covering what's required of us by the state and what's required of us here by the school district.
I would just add, Mark, if you guys, if you wanted to see more explicitly what that is, it is in the training, or excuse me, the program evaluation that we did in April.
Yes.
April in board docs that can be found, and it's very explicit there on what those trainings are.
Thank you. I'm just going to close with, we want security to be everybody's responsibility, and we teach that at the building level. Dr. Hubbard and Dr. Gilhouse emphasize that regularly, that it's all of our responsibility. If we all do it, it works. And we emphasize to our people the importance of doors. If your perimeter is secure, we have a secure school. So we make that one of our priorities. Thank you. Any questions?
All right, thank you very much. That was very clearly reflects the diligence and thoroughness in which this team keeps our buildings and our schools safe for our students and staff and families. So thank you for that. I'm going to start with Ms. Goodburn.
I noticed with the speaker tonight, as well as maybe a letter or two that we got over the weekend, that they were asking for an opt-out procedure. And I would imagine if these are announced prior to, it would be kind of the decision of a parent whether or not they send a child to school there if they were concerned that that child might have a negative reaction to the drill. Is that correct? Or will there be a formal opt-out procedure, or it's just, I'm going to just maybe get my kid out of school early that day or something like that?
So everyone's required to do the drills, including staff members. So having kids opt out and supervising that and removing them from the situation would be very difficult. Plus, it would allow staff members to not be able to participate in the training, which is required by both the fire marshal and the Kansas State Department of Education. So we would ask that if parents didn't want their child to participate, that they wouldn't send them to school on that day, or at least that morning or that afternoon, depending on when the drill is. But I think also, I just want to reiterate that anytime we need to do something procedurally, it takes practice. And so I understand that the trauma and some of the research on that, but I would hope that in our schools that we are doing a really good job of talking to kids about what's going to happen. I know I was at a Code Red drill last year. I just happened to be in the building. This was at a high school, and the principal came on the intercom immediately, said, all right, this is just a reminder, we're going to do a drill. This is not real. She was very explicit in her language about what we're going to do, why we're going to do it, and how we're going to do it. So I'm hopeful that we continue to get better at that, and that students at least have those warnings ahead of time that this is a drill, and we need to practice. I mean, God forbid we ever have an emergency, but when we do, we want everyone to know what the procedures are.
So if parents have questions, the best place that they could go with would be the principal prior to this happening, because maybe then they could sit down with the principal and talk it out, and maybe they think it's really scary, and maybe they have a misconception about what it really is.
Absolutely.
That would be your best suggestion?
I would encourage them to talk to their both classroom teacher and the principal.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton.
Thank you for the presentation. In your example, you talked about the classroom day and the lock of the building. What about in the evenings and extracurricular activities? We have a lot of sporting events, theater events, and then we also have groups that are renting our space. So I was curious how much of this protocol also takes place at those.
Mr. Stratton, I wish I had a great answer for you, but we're vulnerable. We're vulnerable in the evening. We're vulnerable on the weekends. That's just a fact. Now, at events, we do have police and security there, and we have protocols and process in place that we would follow, whether that be a fine arts event, a basketball game, or a football game, whatever the case may be. There are protocols in place for those events that we would follow, but outside of that, when it comes to a group renting our facilities, we don't have security there.
Is that possibly a staffing issue for us too?
It's certainly a piece of staffing, yes, okay, without a doubt.
Right.
But that's not the sole piece, but
okay,
yes, it's certainly one of them.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hembry.
Yeah, I'd love to just hear, so I remember when my oldest son, who's about to start middle school, began kindergarten, our teacher, our principal called these Code Red drills, but I heard from people at other elementary schools that their school called them active shooter drills, which I think has a whole different connotation. So how are we equipping how consistent are we, and how are we equipping our administrators to have some sort of trauma sensitivity when they talk about this with students?
So that was a big part of our revision and the updates that we made this year, and it's one of the biggest reasons why we created that poster that you saw as part of the presentation that will go in each one of our rooms, and why we shared it with the administrators and our staff that our language is a lockdown, a code red, or an evacuation, and everybody knows what the definition of each one of those three terms are, and we can clearly communicate that, and we know where to clearly go in case of any one of those drills or the actual process.
And also our hope is that it's the semantics, that everyone is saying the same thing for those 3 drills and situations, depending on what's going on. But Joe mentioned this earlier, sometimes we say a lockdown, it's automatically a crisis, when it's really not, based on our language, right? And so we just need the semantics to roll through the system and so that we're all speaking the same language.
Great. Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd-Norona?
Has nationally the law enforcement community thought about, I have a total appreciation for the Say Something principles, initiative, and all that, but nationally, has law enforcement thought about how else can we review the communication factor of that with the community, with families, with the students? We have it printed, yet nationally, we're still missing the mark. Has any training been focused on that, or what more can we do with the message? Great message, fundamentally, we get it, but we're still in this situation. Has any training been nationally just focused on that?
I think we have a very good start. We have our Sprigio anonymous
Yes.
online bully reporting. We have our training with our administration. We also have our positive relationships, which we really harped on so much on April because it's what's happening in the buildings. These officers that are in the buildings making positive interactions with the students and the staff, we get a majority of any issues that could be potential trouble spots are reported to us because of those good relationships that we build with the students and their families.
I would add one more thing. Mr. Stubblefield and myself went to an FBI training about 3 weeks ago in Kansas City, Missouri, and we sat through a 2-hour presentation where several FBI agents spoke. At the end of those 2 hours, I walked out of there with a grin on my face because I didn't learn anything. And the reason I didn't learn anything is because we already have everything they talked about in process and our protocol. That doesn't make us great, but it did make me feel good. We follow the Homeland Security, we follow the advice of the FBI, we work with our municipalities, we have clear directions and a process for what takes place in these types of crises. So I felt really good leaving that. We're not know-it-alls. We need to continue to revise, we need to continue to update, and we need to continue to learn. But going to that presentation, and when you're hearing it from the FBI, and that we've got to think we have those processes in place, I felt really good about that. We're far from perfect, don't get me wrong.
Thank you. Ms. Borgman?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I know there's like a million different scenarios, and how do you prepare and plan for this and that, and although you do your best, you certainly can't plan or prepare for all the different things that could happen, and I completely understand that. My question is, with the Uvalde shooter, and I know that, as a parent who's sending several kids off to school, it's on all of our minds, and the Uvalde shooter went through the Code Red drills, right? So he knew the protocols, and he knew that, the doors would lock from the inside and it would be hard. Do you foresee there to be any, as these, students that have started with these shooter or the Code Reds, as they get older, right? And, that they've been through these drills, and they know what is going to happen inside a school when a gun is brought in. Do you anticipate any changes in how we practice these drills, or any different ways of doing things, because these kids are growing up and, they have participated in these drills?
I think to answer the question is, of course, there's no profile for an active shooter. The FBI acknowledges that, the DEA that teaches a lot of our training. I think our response to that question is the physical part of the building. Can we access every part of every building at every minute? And yes, we can. Each officer has certain master keys that'll open every door in the district. As long as we control the perimeter And as long as we take control when we have to go inside, which is the ability to get in every room, we don't have to look for a key. Every officer has that key that'll open every classroom in every building. Time is on our side.
Sure.
Did we, I know that there were a lot of things that didn't go right with the Uvalde situation. Were there some big key takeaways that you've learned in this whole, through that tragedy, or?
Well, it reemphasizes our training. We don't wait. We don't need an authority. We train with every police department in Johnson County. We all train the same. When you get there, you go in. And we discussed that today at staff meeting, and I asked that of all of my officers, when these events take place, are you ready to go in? Because if you're not, we want to talk about that and address that, because my staff, I feel 100%, we're going in. I don't need anybody from somewhere else to tell me it's time. We train to go to the shots. We go in the building, we go to the situation, we don't hesitate.
So do our municipalities. That was one of the topics that I brought up at our discussion. So we weren't going to wait, and I don't want to throw dirt on another scenario or somebody else without being there, but we will not wait. The municipalities will not wait. They will move to any noise. And again, God forbid something like that happen, but to sit out and discuss, they'll move right to it. That is part of the deal that all of us, that our police will do.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Owsley?
So I have a comment and then a question. I will say, after Uvalde, one of the things that made me feel more confident in our security plan was that Chief Douglas would ask all of the officers that he hired, if you are not willing to rush in, I don't want to hire you. And I remember Chief Douglas giving that presentation, and that meant something to me. And then also, with the Highland shooting, the issue was that all of the jurisdictions showed up and ran in, and so it was an issue of coordinating and not necessarily an issue of people trying to sit back. It was an issue of like mission responded, and we responded. I think Overland Park responded. It was like everyone responded to go there, and so that gave me comfort as well, that all of those local law enforcement agencies worked together with our folks. And
those were other topics that we discussed on showing up at those scenes and what that protocol looks like and moving straight to any possible noise. So those were other topics discussed.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make Uvalde better. It just brought me a little peace of mind. So my question for clarification was, so I love the new uniforms. Officer Laughlin, you did a lovely job modeling. I appreciate that. So you guys are our district resource officers, so you guys have that uniform. Do like the SROs also have that uniform? Are the folks, the Operations Information Central officers who sit like at the front of the buildings, do they also have the softer uniform? Because I remember at the presentation in April, it was like we had a few different uniforms that people were choosing from. Is this everybody across the board with the softer uniform?
So the DRO is transitioning into that now. The CSOs, a majority of them are already in this uniform. The Prairie Village Police Department is in this uniform, and I'm working now with Lenexa, Shawnee, and Overland Park to see if they'll transition into that. So those talks have just started.
Well, I'm sure Officer Laughlin will model it for them if they are trying to make a decision. Thank you so much to both of you for being here tonight.
Ms. Owsley?
Thank you. I believe almost all of my questions were asked and answered, so thank you for that. One other point I just wanted to say thank you about was spending the time this summer to work through some of those data collection questions that were raised in April, and so thank you for working through that and continuing to collaborate and provide information to help us make better decisions moving forward. Can I jump back to the lockdowns? Just out of curiosity, I appreciate your description of what that kind of means, what that looks like, and an example. Typically, How long do they last? I know is it just a couple minutes sometimes?
Yes, typically around 5 minutes is about
Okay.
the average length of time for a lockdown. Again,
For a drill, is that, or for, in general?
In general, when we have a lockdown? I mean, it probably varies quite a bit.
it does
but-
vary. The majority of them are right around 5 minutes until
Okay.
something is under control. However, it could certainly go longer. In the case of Oak Park Mall, if something went wrong across the street, we might be in something for an hour or two, which is why we would continue teaching. We would have passing periods, but we would not be leaving the building or wouldn't be entering the building.
All right.
And I would say they're not exceptionally frequent, but, I mean, things happen. With as many buildings and as many municipalities as we have lockdowns pretty regularly. Again, 5 minutes, sometimes are an hour, though. Just depends on the situation.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
I had one additional question. I've been thinking about this idea of code reds, and does the sort of trauma of them outweigh the value of them if an incident were to happen? And are there bodies beyond Shawnee Mission? That feels like a really big question for Shawnee Mission to sit down and answer itself. It seems like, I don't know if it's FEMA, I don't know if it's FBI or Homeland Security. Like, are there agencies way above our level that are looking at them in a more holistic way that we would follow the lead of in the future?
I would say yes, there is, and there's starting to be some research around it for sure. However, right now, we have a state statute that says we will do this. And there's, I think, different interpretations on whether we would have to have an intruder drill, if you will. But in speaking, I asked for a legal opinion on this today, and then we spoke with KSDE as well, who absolutely suggested that they would not support not having those, that they believe at least one of our 3 crisis drills should be around, I believe they use the word intruders.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, I think I just want to remind folks too that these presentations that we receive at workshops, thank you for that, are posted to the website. So if anyone wants to look over those, you can find them under Information Central, under Board Workshop Presentations. All right. We have one other discussion item tonight, and that is 3.2, Real World Learning, Personalized Learning. Thank you all very much for your report.
So just briefly, we have our data from the class of 2022 for real-world learning. So we just want to give a brief update of sort of where we were last year, what our data looks like, and some look-aheads into this year. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Fleury.
Thank you, Dr. Hubbard, and thank you, Board, for having us here tonight. It's great to be able to share some of the successes that we've had as we go into our 3rd year of our 3-year Kauffman Grant strategic plan around real-world learning. And one thing I really want to pull out as we talk about our strategic plan, the district strategic plan, is when we talk about every student. Dr. Grumman's going to be sharing some data later on the successes of moving that MVA needle forward, but also some areas of opportunity for student groups that we may not be servicing the way we should be when it comes to access to these real-world learning opportunities. There are many connections to our district strategic plan with the work being done through the Kauffman Grant and through our real-world learning team, including expanding our career pathways, giving students more voice and choice in how they access their instruction and curriculum, providing them those relevant learning experiences, and building more robust community partnerships, similar to what Ms. Boyd-Nerona said about this morning at Shawnee Mission West with the 100-plus business partners that came to have lunch with our teachers and talk about expanding these opportunities. And of course, overall, we want to have students be successful after high school, both academically and interpersonally. And many of these, most all of these opportunities have connections to interpersonal skills training and focusing on those activities. As a reminder, this is not just Shawnee Mission. This is a regional effort, including now more than 40 school districts and affecting nearly 80,000 high school students. And that group continues to grow. We're being recognized both across the state and across the nation as some of the most innovative high school redesign planning that's been happening in many, many years. The Kauffman Foundation has been supporting us through collaboration through the superintendents. I know Dr. Hubbard last week spoke to the old days where they'd call each other about calling a snow day or not, and now collaboration with the superintendents has moved way beyond that to where they are talking regularly about how we're moving the needle on real-world learning. Laura Harsh is here tonight, and she is our business to education liaison housed inside the Shawnee Mission Education Foundation. She is out there networking with her peers and also helping to recruit new business partners to join our fold. The Kauffman Foundation's been working to vet industry credentials. I initially thought that would be one of those low-hanging fruit that we could really push with kids, but what we learned is that's actually the messiest piece of some of this work. While the State Department of Education will recognize over 200 different types of credentials, industry doesn't know what 90% of those are. The ones that they do know are related typically to licensure, so like healthcare, CNA, EMT, and then also the IT world. The Kauffman Foundation's also been working across the region to help vet some different assessments of employability skills. That work is ongoing, and we expect to have an update from them this fall. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dennis, I believe, who's going to talk about the past.
As Dr. Flory mentioned, this is not new to Shawnee Mission. It's not new to our region. We've been at this since at least the 2019-2020 school year, when we pulled together a team of around 50 people, community partners, educators, people from higher ed, people from even the State Department of Education to look at and help plan this work. In the 2021 school year, we added the business to education program officer, Laura Harsh, who is here tonight, and I offered Laura the chance to come speak, and I don't think she was interested. But she has been indispensable and really very key to our work in this area. We also piloted a couple of products that year. We piloted U-Science, which is a product that looks at not only interest but also aptitude and skill and tries to match that with career interests. We piloted a product called Emblaze as well to try to manage our internships and decided that that platform wasn't robust enough, and so we did not end up adopting that one. This past year was a busy year around real-world learning. And probably the most visible part of that was our real-world learning counselors, which were added in each of the 5 comprehensive high schools. They are mediators between students and those opportunities and working closely with Laura. They're working with higher ed. They are working to find internships and opportunities for students to get that real-world experience. We had the entrepreneurial incubator open at Oak Park Mall, and I know you're well aware of that, Tiffany Dixon, and the work that she did last year. We had work-based learning. We took another look at what we mean by work-based learning and tried to offer some expanded opportunity for how we could offer credit around work in the community. We've expanded the use of mentors, especially around entrepreneurship, and then we've restarted business to education lunch and learns. That happened a little bit before the pandemic, and then kind of restarted in the spring with the intent to begin doing that on a monthly basis. So we're going to look at a few different ways of how we define what a market value asset is. This definition you have on the screen now is the official Kauffman. It comes from Prep KC, and it talks about what does industry value and recognize, what skills do they recognize that would help students make a seamless transition into post-secondary, whether that is post-secondary ed or the workplace. We believe, and the definition talks about how that can help them be more successful in that next stage of their lives, and it also makes it more affordable by giving them a kind of a head start down that road. In Shawnee Mission, we've tended to look more at this abbreviated definition, but I think it very clearly says that MVAs identified as specific work opportunities or accreditations that contribute to student success in work and learning beyond graduation. So it's that focus beyond our 4 walls. to look at what that means in our classrooms. Dr. Grimman is going to share with you the specific definition we look at and then share some data with us.
So part of our evolution of implementing real-world learning is that we've had multiple opportunities to refine how we measure student completion of one or more market value assets. Sometimes we have to look into our proverbial crystal ball and make some assumptions based on the data that we have in hand. So, for example, just looking quickly at this chart, a student meets one or more market value asset criteria if they fill one or more of these buckets. So, for example, if they the way it reads, earns 9 or more college credit hours, participates in one or more work-based learning opportunities, or earns an employer-recognized certification or credentials. So as an example here, when we think about the college credits, whether or not a student actually receives college credit, let's say for an AP or IB exam, depends on the exam subject, depends on the score itself, where the students choose to attend college. Sometimes even the student's program of study in college. When we consider employee-recognized certifications and credentials, Dr. Fleury talked about that already. We know that the credentials these are credentials that many employers recognize, but whether the credential is used or needed until we might not know until the student's out of high school. So when we're putting this data together, we build some assumptions into it. For example, if you take an AP exam and earn a score of 3 or higher, we assume that's 3 credits. IB exam 4 higher, 3 credits. Participation in college now at Johnson County Community College, 3 credits, and so on. So one of the objectives, one of the things we're looking forward to do even in this year and moving forward, is making sure that students also understand these criteria. When we start talking about market value assets, what do we mean by that? Because there are instances where we might have to reach out to students, where students might be doing something that are outside of the school environment, and we want to make sure that they understand what we're talking about when we're referring to work-based learning or internships or earning college credits. So if we move on to some of the data then related to those fields, the class of 2022, 45% of that class earned 1 or more market value assets. So as you're looking left to right, 17% of the student population earned 9 or more college credit hours, or at least based on the set of assumptions that you saw on the previous slide. I do want to mention that we have 18 or almost 19% that are what I would call in progress. They earned somewhere between 1 and 9 credits. And then 29% participated in 1 or more of those work-based learning activities, and then 16 or almost 16.7% earned 1 or more certificates. Now, if you're trying to do some quick math in your head, if you're adding the 17, 29, and 16, you're not going to get 45, because some students fill more than one of those buckets. They may earn 9 or more college credits and receive some kind of certification. So when you're reading that percentage, those are percentage of students who've earned 1 or more of those market value assets from the class of 2022. And you can see that's it's a fair, almost a 4 or 5% increase from the class of 2021. You can also see the evolution again of how we've collected the data over the last few years. So we kind of look forward to being able to continue finding more creative ways to making sure that we're capturing all of the opportunities that are out there for students. If we take this class of 2022 data and break it out by each of the demographic subgroups, and the print's a little bit small, so let your eyes adjust, but you can see some differences among some of our groups that we've already started to look into and to target. One of the questions I have is, do we have pathways and MVA possibilities for all students and all all student interest areas? So that's certainly an area that I think Dr. Fleury and the administrative team are exploring as we're evaluating our program of studies.
All right, so looking forward, first of all, great segue in regard to this first bullet point of collaboration with special education and ELL, we know that those numbers are unacceptable. And we're going to make data-driven decisions and be intentional about targeting our special education students and our ELL students. We all understand we've gone through PLC conference, and a large or huge emphasis was on all means all. And our special education students and our ELL students, they're general education students first. And so we need to be intentional about getting those students involved in real-world learning and having conversations system-wide about how we can better serve those student populations. As a matter of fact, today we've started those conversations in our CTE professional learning today. That was a topic of conversation, of being intentional about getting our SPED students and our EL students more involved with real-world learning. And those are going to be ongoing conversations and collaborations with our special education department. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to emphasize, some of these things. We're not going to, our elementary and career exploration, we're going to start early. Starting in middle school, starting in high school, that's too late, to be honest with you. We need to have these conversations starting in elementary in terms of, career exploration and what we can do to get students thinking about the careers, and also what our elementary teachers doing currently that could be considered real-world learning. And so we're having those conversations right now. When you look at a focus on IPS, IPS stands for Individual Plan of Study. We are sending out a rubric to our middle and high school staff and students in terms of what are they currently doing in terms of real-world learning. That is a large focus in terms of our strategic plan. Like, every student needs a personalized learning plan, and that's what that IPS is for. We are also going to have a pre-K 12 real-world core integration team. We need to be consistent with our communication across the district. We need to have a common language for real-world learning. And we also need to make sure that we have equal access. And so we're going to get together a team with building administrators, counselors, core teachers, and CTE teachers across the district, across all 5 feeder patterns, and have that team meet on a consistent basis so that we can, again, make sure that the communication is out there and everyone is on the same page in terms of what we can do to increase access, and also what we can do and are currently doing in regard to MVAs. I believe that's the end of our presentation, so we will stand for any questions.
Fantastic, thank you. This is so fun.
Yes.
It's good stuff. I believe we are starting with Mr. Stratton on this round of questions.
Sure. The work-based learning, obviously, we've gone from 0 to 21% to 29%. 2 big reasons. Number one, it's a new program. Number two, we're coming out of a pandemic, so the opportunity to interact. My question is where we are in workforce development and workforce need. Are these positions that these students are partaking in paid at any level? And are all of them, some of them, how is that decided? And then secondly to that is, are students at a position where they're like, well, I would take the work-based learning experience, but over here they're offering me $21 an hour. Do they have to pick and choose? Can they do both? What are we seeing?
So I think the first question was, are they paid? And yes, about half the kids are paid. The going rate right now for kids on a paid internship is between $15 and $17 an hour. So not too shabby for a high school 16, 17-year-old. And many of those students are then getting hired on even during the summer. They'll finish up their, quote, internship and then just transition into a part or full-time employee. And the second part of your question, Mr. Stratton?
To do with workforce, so those rates right there, but then employer number 3 down here is saying, we'll give you $23 an hour, come on over here.
I don't think we've actually had that competitive level yet. It could get there. But at this point, we haven't seen that kind of competition on the pay rate for the paid internships.
I would also say that's when we would send Laura out to say, partner with us versus just letting kids get away.
Are you offering a job, Mr. Stratton? $22 an hour? To do
We'll
this.
talk offline.
All right, thank you. Ms. Embry?
Yeah, my question, it strikes me that so much of this work is setting our students up for success way beyond the walls of Shawnee Mission. And how, it feels like a big data black hole to me, what happens to them. I don't know if there's data there that I'm not aware of, or if Kaufman is looking at starting to really track whether these MVAs do translate to what we think they translate to.
So two pieces that I can answer on that. One is we do a follow-up report for students 2 quarters after they graduate. And that goes from the State Department of Education April 15th typically of any given year. So we have that data point. In my mind, that's way too early to really understand the long-term benefits. So Dr. Grumman and I have been working with REL Central, education research lab, on looking at longer term, trying to access labor data, IRS data potentially. They can help facilitate some of those conversations. And that's a partnership between REL Central, Wichita School District, KSDE, and Shawnee Mission. So we're trying to get that long-term longitudinal data.
That's exciting.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Boyd-Nerona.
Yes, loving this conversation. I'm loving the fact that we are looking at intentionally expanding the definition and value of our MVAs. I just love that mindset of just starting there and that we're all in the same accord for that. I do want to mention 2 highlights that I know of, that I know there are more in this program. One of the real-world learning counselors at each high school, great opportunity for that to expand about that program, and then that we've collaborated with colleges, including HBCUs. So those are just 2 wins that I do want to highlight for the program because it's just great. What's the other thing?
I can always circle back to.
Circle back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Borgman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Question regarding, and I know it's a relatively new program and we have to start strategically and small and all those things, and I completely understand that. For me, like the average kiddo, right? The average student, the kiddo that's not in an AP class or an IB class, not necessarily super interested in a signature program. How are we, and I'm guessing that's a majority of students in Shawnee Mission at this point. How are we reaching those kids? How are we engaging them?
So the real-world learning opportunities spread well beyond the AP, IB, or the programs housed in this building over at CTC, whether it's computer science or marketing or woods and welding, engineering, auto tech. You know, the other CTE pathways at the high schools all have connections to internships outside of those buildings. And then even beyond that into the core, when Mr. Stubblefield talked about that core integration team, we're talking really about core content, ELA, math, science, social studies. And Laura this morning was at Shawnee Mission South with our English teachers and has been working with the curriculum cadres for high school English around embedding client projects into the core curriculum. Because when you review like the English 9, ELA 1 priority standards, when they talk about research and persuasive writing, those lend themselves directly to a client project as these come across for marketing projects or other types of small group research. So we're having those conversations at that core level, and Dr. Dennis may have additional comments on that piece.
I don't have a lot to add to that. I would say that that's where the individual plan of study can come in, that we've talked a little bit about. Going back to Ms. Boyd-Nerona's question about the real-world learning counselors, I just wanted to add on that point that those are funded with ESSER dollars, and so there is a sunset on that unless we find some way to continue to fund those.
And I'll add to that. As Dr. Gibbons talks about those real-world learning counselors, they're not just, liaisons between me and Laura and the schools. They are also the AP coordinators for the building. They're the College Now coordinators for Johnson County Community College. They handle all things college credit outside of IB that affects our kids. They also are they're the individual plan of study coordinators for the building. So a lot of that lift will be on them when it comes to building out a more robust IPS for all of our students.
I do love that it's being incorporated into the core classes, so that's really exciting. Thank you. May I ask a follow-up? Is that all right? Sure. In terms of Zello, I know that Zello is a big component in this. However, it's not all of it, right? I also know that Zello, in maybe some classes, it's taken very serious, and in others, it's not. And so, how does Zello kind of play into all of this? And is there a more, are we trying to be more intentional in some of our classes about the importance of what Zello can provide to our students?
I would say that's where that Kansas Star rubric for the IPS comes into play. The buildings are reviewing those within their building leadership teams at the middle and high level, and that will be part of the building admin's 20-day plans that they submit to Dr. Sherman and Mr. Stubblefield each month. So to really have an emphasis as they're having their BLT meetings, that's on the agenda every time they meet. What are we doing to drive this forward to try to get to that star level or whatever the exemplary level on that rubric?
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Ms. Osley?
So I know that we have more kids working than we do getting an MVA credit for working. And so we're using a specific, you're working with a program, an internship that we've helped provide. We're looking for a specific skill set before we say you have a market value asset for that. But any kid working, 2 years at Hy-Vee, if they get a letter of recommendation from their manager who says, you were punctual, you were, reliable, you were, a good employee, they can use that when they go to apply for college. They can say, I have a letter of recommendation from my boss. I do have a real world learning experience, even if it wasn't something that was cultivated by the district. I guess just to say that I think it was 29% or whatever it is, we want to make that higher, but also we're aware that there's certainly more than that as a percentage of our kids that are working and going to school full time. Do we have an idea of what that number is by any chance, or?
So I'll let Dr. Grumman follow up maybe with my comments. Kauffman Foundation team will say a market value asset is anything that is legitimately resume worthy. Mm-hmm. So like you say, the student who has worked for 2 years at Hy-Vee, been punctual, has good people skills, good interpersonal skills, that would be to them a market value asset. Now we've had some internal discussions about whether we want to count those types of things over traditional internships. And we're still continuing with those conversations as we move into the new year. We do capture some of those work experiences, like your Hy-Vee example, if the student is leaving school to do that during school time, because we do allow release time for jobs like that. What we are not necessarily capturing are the kids who are doing it outside of school time and we have no idea where they work. Mm-hmm. We did add some questions into the senior survey this year. Didn't have a whole lot of response rate on those around the market value assets. But our next iteration of that survey is to be doing that 7th grade year, 8th grade year, 9th grade year, finding those kids that have a business interest. They're mowing lawns in their neighborhood, and they need a mentor to take that to the next level.
Even if we're just keying them into the fact that they have what they're doing as part of their regular life is an asset that they can communicate to employers that, oh, no, you've got a solid track record your junior and senior year of working and going to school. Like a lot of adults don't do that. So not that I want to take credit for our kids that are doing stuff without us, but we do want to make sure that they know what they're doing is valued.
Yeah. One of the things I think we did learn from the survey is our students don't always see the things that we see. Mm-hmm. So helping our students understand what is a market value asset, because a lot of you're right, a number of things that they're already doing would qualify. And then the other piece to that is how do we find creative ways to, sort of incentivize them to report that so that so that one, they can be recognized for that, and two, that they're, that they're included in the data. So there's going to be some ongoing discussions as well as, one, making sure our students hear market value asset, individual plans of study. So for example, in the system, I took out the word Zello and actually put IPS portfolio in the system, so they're seeing IPS portfolio more constantly instead of a brand name, because the individual plan of study is what they really need to see out there. So the vocabulary, the semantics, those are definitely things that were common language, right?
Yeah.
Is definitely something we're working on this year.
Appreciate it. I have more questions, but I can wait for us to go around again, or I can add that I just have two, so I can wait or shoot them now.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And then I wanted to say thank you to Laura for developing all of these relationships with businesses in the community. As part of that, have we worked with any of the local unions with apprenticeships? Because I know we have kids, maybe if they're not prepared to go to college right away, or maybe that's not something they're interested in, like the linemen have the best parental leave policy that I've heard of with like 9 months off, and IBEW has this great campus for their apprentices, and I mean we have a lot of local union leaders that I'm sure would work, and I know I've seen them at the North Career Fairs, but I didn't know if we were intentionally cultivating those relationships or not.
So we did have some exploratory meetings last fall with the president of the local AFL-CIO, with the Teamsters, with the Home Builders Association, and with the building trades councils. Great discussions. They want to engage. They are basically at this point going back to their individual unions and even companies and saying, how can we get around some of the red tape that's either there because of statute or it's there because of just this is the way we've done business to help get kids more engaged. We've also engaged with them on helping to understand what we need to build out at the CTC, because we've got 25,000 square feet, and construction there is likely going to happen in the spring of 2024 to roll out some new programs around construction trades. So we want to make sure we're doing it right when it comes to opening up additional programs there.
And then my final question, you mentioned the release to go to work. I hate to call it this because when I was in high school, it was called work release, and that's not the terminology that we want to use, but you could leave during the day and go to your job and also obtain credit for it that would go towards your credits towards graduation. And if we know we have kids who are working full-time or carrying that load, so we still offer that program where you can leave and get a credit, or
Yes.
You're nodding. Okay,
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So
yes,
how
we
does that work?
do that, and it doesn't matter if they're working during that 1 to 3 time frame that's actually built in their schedule, or if they're working in the evenings, because we know if they're working in the evenings, we want them to have time to take care of school work and whatever else they might need to do. So yeah, and it is in the program planning guide. There's some definitions in there about how many hours and how many credits and all that, and it's called work experience.
I like that better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have 2 questions. One is about kind of linking back to thinking about ESSER funding and thinking about budgeting ahead. So there are a counselor in each high school. What other kinds of support, like just hearing today in the report about the levels of integration that are happening as we continue each year. So for example, you spending time, Laura, with the high school teachers and talking about how to integrate that into the 9th grade English class and looking at client-based projects. That level of integration is incredibly exciting. Are there other pieces that we need to think about that ESSER is funding to support that kind of work? Like, is it software that we're paying for, or, and maybe it's not a question to be answered now, but at some point.
I think, so we have 4 counselors that are paid for out of ESSER and 1 that is paid for with the Kaufman grant, both of which will likely go away about the same time. And then Laura's position was also funded through the grant through January, and at that time the foundation will be picking up the liaison position. But I don't think we have anything else in ESSER dollars that pertain to real world learning I don't think we have anything.
That's good. Okay. Thank you for that. And then my other question is looking back at the data. I appreciate the commitment to looking at opportunities for our kids with disabilities and English language learners and really, and all of our students, but really focusing in on those students. And if I'm looking at, I think it's 9 and 10 or something like that, or the two slides, there is information over 20, 21, and 22, looking at progress that we've made, and then that 20 slide breaks it down by subgroups. So I would imagine that, is my assumption correct, that we would be looking at growth as well for each of those subgroups over time to see if we're moving in the right direction?
Right, certainly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Thank you, this is fantastic. I know, Ms. Boyd-Nerona, if you had a question, but also I'm just going to keep going down the dais, so I haven't forgotten you. I'm going to go to Ms. Goodburn. Oh, yeah, because you haven't even had a chance yet.
That's okay. Get me in. I have a question, I guess, or just comments about college credits. We all know college credits equal money. Typically, AP classes cost, right? Because the AP tests, IB costs money. And college participation at JCCC, I see that their credit hour is about $97 an hour. So for 3 credit hours, it'd be almost $300 for a course, which I realize, believe me, my son did that, and it was wonderful when he went to KU, and the credit hours were 3 times what they are at JCCC. So that saved quite a bit of money. However, that still is money that has to come out of pocket for somebody to do these things. So have we made, I know we've had this discussion a lot over the years. I've been on the board almost 12 years. We've had this conversation a lot. So what are they doing at the high school levels, or what are we doing to be able to help those students that want to participate in AP, IB, or potentially, earn the College Now credit through JCCC? Are we doing things at the high school level to be able to help fund that? Or is it still one of those things that's just difficult to do because it's money coming out of somewhere? I know there's some love funds and that kind of stuff. The high schools have kind of their own funds and stuff to be able to help students that want to do these things. But is there anything that or anything that you guys can tell me?
I would say first, for starters, where we often see the gap is getting students into those courses that offer those opportunities. That's our first layer, is making sure that students are on track and are willing and have the confidence and feel like they have the support. We want to make sure that they're sort of recruiting students into those into the courses that offer those college credit opportunities, and then. Much of that, then the conversation about affordability can be a delicate conversation, I think, sometimes with students and parents, but much of it continues to be on a sort of a case-by-case basis, where we try to be aware of where students are with whether or not they feel that the financials are a barrier to them participating. But the first piece I see is making sure we have students that are really on track and going for those courses.
I would also say that similar to other things in our buildings, if students were to reach out, especially if they're free and reduced lunch, we would have some avenues for them. I can't guarantee that we could pay for 9 college credit hours a semester, but I think there are plenty of avenues that we could help kids that really had an interest in either College Now or AP.
Yeah, and when it comes to the testing, like AP testing and IB tests that cost money, there are reduced fees for those students that are free and reduced lunch. So.
We also have some ESSER dollars set aside specifically to help high school students with recovery, but we could also consider some of that as well.
I thought I remembered too, I think when some of the IB, we had some donors maybe that gave some money for any student that wanted to take, and I know it might have been building specific.
It was built, North had
Yeah.
a donor that paid for all of the IB testing, I believe. But I think I know at Northwest there's a group called, can you help me, the Secret Yeah, that pay for a lot of things for kids.
Yeah.
So I think every building has something.
Something like that, like
Yes.
a discretionary fund that can be used by probably the principal or the administration team or something if they know of a situation, and there could be a myriad of situations.
Absolutely.
But this would be a possibility if they had a student who, okay, all right, thanks.
And then if I could also add, beyond AP and IB, there are many, many classes at JCCC that are free to high school students. You know, whether it's marketing or graphic design or welding and woods and plumbing and all that different stuff, those are free through the state under a program called Excel and CTE. We do have to get the kids out there, and if transportation's a barrier, we work with Dr. Ziegler and her team to help with that. And then now with the Kansas Promise Scholarship Act, after high school, many of those programs, including the core pieces of those degrees, are free for Kansas residents within X number of months after graduation.
Okay, I'm looking down the dais. Did anyone else have any more questions? Okay, Ms. Boyd-Noran.
Briefly, Dr. Ziegler and Dr. Tyrone Bates are not going to toot their own horn, so I will do it for them. So they were panelists at an event that they attended this weekend. And two things, Dr. Ziegler mentioned just what Dr. Stubblefield had said also, that we're here for all of our students. And that is like a foundational mindset that we are all there, but you saying that to that particular audience, which was of students of color and their parents and community stakeholders, was paramount. Also, when we looked at the market value avenues, and we were continuing the discussion with AP and IB, Dr. Bates mentioned that perhaps looking at pathways for students who traditionally haven't considered that course of action, to let them possibly audit the courses. And I thought about that. I was like, have we considered that? He threw it out there. I don't want to take his thunder, but that is part of the innovation that we could possibly implement within our programs, because we know that all of our students have the potential, but sometimes that pathway just is not clear and clear-cut for them to see it. So that could be a possible thing that, once again, Dr. Bates brought up. I don't want to steal his thunder, but don't have to answer that tonight, but have we even considered letting them audit courses to kind of see that, oh, I can handle this as a course load, or knowing that other parameters are there that might have a burden or barrier, but letting students even consider just auditing the course to see, I can do this. I thought it was this way, but it's not. So just consider that as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that going back to those intentional conversations with students, right? To me, it's about really personalizing those conversations and encouraging those students. And more importantly, we want them, no matter if they're auditing class or taking the class, we want them to have the proper supports, right? So that they can be successful in either situation. And I think those are conversations that have to be really personal and intentional, and we're going to continue doing that.
All right. Okay, any other questions? Okay, all right. Drs. Fleury, Grumman, Stubblefield, and Dennis, thank you very much. And Ms. Hirsch, thank you for this. This was fun. Fun conversation. Yay. Okay, that concludes our discussion items. We have about 7 general consent items. So 4.0, approval of consent. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Goodburn.
Thank you.
Second, Borkman.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, we have 4 action items. 7.1, approval of contract with Summit Achievement Center. Dr. Hubbard, a few words.
So this is to provide educational services, related services, and transportation for 4 of our special needs students.
All right, do I have a motion?
So moved, Owsley.
Second?
Hembry, second.
All right, any questions?
I don't have a question as much as that, like, this really struck me. I know we've had so many conversations in the last year about how underfunded we are around special education, but this item just really stood out to me. It's $460,000 for a year of services for 4 of our special education students. And when I think about the level of need that they must have for us to be doing this, it just hit home for me how the not fully funded special education services in our state really show up in our budget. This is just 4 students.
I would just add to the, as we look at open enrollment and what that means for us coming down the road in the next few years is concerning as well with not being fully funded in special education.
All right, thank you for that. All right, so I will seek a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. 7.2, approval agreement between Board of Education of Shawnee Mission and the Shawnee Mission, NEA Shawnee Mission. This is very exciting.
So I just want to, I'm going to start by just a huge thank you to both of the teams that have been through IBB and negotiations really for the last year, really the last 2 to 3 years. We've really worked hard to ensure a positive environment, and I feel very proud of the relationship that the district has with Shawnee Mission NEA. And so to be at this point at this time of the year is it's great for us. It's great for all of us. Dr. Schumacher, is there anything you would like to add, or Dr. Gilhouse as members of that team?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate just the great relationship that we've been fostering over the last, as you said, Dr. Hubbard, 3 years. Has really come to fruition, and we've worked hard. I think the big takeaway in this contract is the PLC time. That's a big piece that we're real proud of, and of course, the new salary schedule, which is going to benefit all of our staff for a long time. So thanks to the whole team.
That's great. Okay. All right, have I sought a motion yet, first and second? Okay, let's do that, and then.
I want to add one more thing, just while we're talking. 7.03 is just an amendment that is a result of 7.02. And so it's not something new, it's something we've had, but it is an amendment as a result of the new salary schedule.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm going to seek a motion for 7.2, approval of the agreement between the district and NEA Shawnee Mission.
Move to approve.
Oh, Mr. Stratton.
Got a motion?
And I'll second it.
And second? Okay. All right, Ms. Borgman?
Yeah, my question, thank you for the comments. Why do you think, I mean, we've come a long way, right? Why do you think that we have made such strides in this area?
I think it's been a group effort, right? I mean, it's been, it really started with the implementation of IBB, moving to that format. I think the transparent nature of our meetings has really added to that too. People get to see all of us interacting with each other, interacting one-on-one, seeing us kind of on a personal level too, and getting a perspective from how we represent the board and how Shawnee Mission NEA represents their members. And it's taken time, right? And we've been transparent with each other. We've disagreed at times, but at the end of the day, at the end of the last 3 contracts, we've come away with doing things that are really great for our professional teachers. So again, really proud of it.
I would also add that at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want to work in a place where we feel valued, where it's focused on kids and learning, and it's taken ourselves back. I don't know how many years ago that was, but nobody wants to be in that situation. The board doesn't want to be in that situation. Administrators don't want to be in that situation. Teachers don't want to be in that situation. So I think refocusing on why we're here and why we do what we do for kids every day, because that's where we all want to be. And we don't always agree, and that's okay, but we have found a way to disagree and move forward.
Thank you all for that. Okay, so I'm going to take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right. 7.3, this is the other approval of so it's basically a correction or an update to the MOU the memo of understanding regarding compensation for full-time secondary teachers. Do I have a motion?
Move approval, Hembry.
Thank you. A second?
Second, Borgman.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And our final action item, approval of secure access door control buttons.
So Dr. Gilhouse alluded to this earlier in the presentation with safety and security, but this is for the secondary lock in our elementary schools, just to add an extra layer of safety. And middle, thank you.
It's to hardwire all of our buildings, elementary and secondary. So the second lock, there will be a 3-panel button on 2 desks in each office so that they can unlock door number 1, door number 2, and door number 3. No more looking for fobs, and we only could control 2 doors previous to that. So now we will have complete control over all 3 doors to check anybody that's coming into our building.
Appreciate that. Okay, do I have a motion?
Move approval, Goodburn.
Thank you. Second?
Second, Boyd Nerona.
All right, all in favor
Wait,
say,
wait.
oh, sorry.
I just
I
want to
apologize.
provide clarification because Hawker's not included in this.
So
but
Hawker
can
Grove.
you just give that explanation
I
for
can
folks?
elaborate on that. So
Okay.
Hawker Grove is the one middle school that when you go to the outside door and you are buzzed into, you are actually currently in the office, okay? So there's no holding area at Hawker Grove. However, starting in September, they will be a part of the bond process in updating their facilities, and so we will dedicate a certain amount of that with working with our architects to create that holding tank and foyer. I will also provide some additional capital outlay, so it's not going to take away from what they want to create in their projects, but that will be our main priority.
Thanks. I just wanted the Hawker folks to know that a holding tank, a vestibule, whatever
You got
is
it.
coming, is on its way. Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, appreciate that. Okay, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Board comments. I believe that takes us to Ms. Hembry. Kick us off.
Oh, gosh. I was just going to share, the presentations tonight really reminded me in the spring when we were doing graduations, there was a parent after the Project Search graduation who pulled me aside and shared that his son had just finished Project Search, was employed for the first time at Advent Health. He was thrilled. And he also shared that his older son had gone through Shawnee Mission East and graduated with 30 credit hours under his belt. And he commented on how well served both of his students, who were very different, were by the Shawnee Mission system. And some of the presentations here tonight just made me realize what an incredible feat it is to be able to serve 2 very different students very, very well. It made me proud then, and I didn't share it, but the presentation tonight made me incredibly proud as well. So I just wanted to take a moment and pat ourselves on the back a little bit for being able to really live into all means all, and I see us doing that here tonight, and I'm really proud of our system.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd-Nerona?
Yes, I just want to say that outside of our role here, many of you all just see us here at the DIS. But I've really enjoyed the last 2 weeks of being out in the community and engaging with a lot of different type of stakeholders who honestly have a vested interest in the success of SMSD, but we are one. So I wanted to say that, and that I'm enjoying my role as the newbie, and that is all for tonight. Thank you.
All right. Ms.
Yeah,
Borgman?
just want to tell teachers and kids, welcome back. It's that time. I can't wait to see my social media just filled with, first day of school pictures. They just make me so happy. So really excited for school to get started and for it to be a normal year. What is normal anymore? But we hope that it's more normal than it has been in the past the past 2 years. And also just wanted to give a huge shout out to Dr. McKinney and David Armovich for just being really incredible people and helping a mom and her son who really needed it. So thank you to you both.
All right, Ms. Owsley?
I want to second the welcome back. I'm very excited to return my children to their educators. I know that's a sentiment that's shared by many parents. And I also wanted to let folks know that September 17th is U.S. Constitution Day. And I know that my Fort and a lot of local legal groups are looking for cute kids and teachers to read the Constitution aloud on September 17th, both at the courthouse in Olathe and at the federal courthouse, the Bob Dole Building at 5th and State in KCK. So if you have a kid that you would like to have participate in Constitution Day, you can just Google it and sign up. And it's a nice way to make civics fun, says the lawyer. I don't know. I like to walk across the street to the courthouse and see the kids be cute, but it is a neat way to bring kids into the federal courthouse in a way that they don't normally come. So that's all, pointing that out. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Ms. Goodburn.
Welcome back. And I just wanted to give a shout out to all the administrators, everyone that's been working really hard this summer too. And I know it started out, it's just amazing. The positivity around this district has just been, this summer just seems like it's off the charts, starting with the PLC conference and seeing the notes from teachers who said it's the best PD that they've ever done. And then you had open court, you had teachers participating over the summer to learn the new open court system. Then you had the leadership retreat, and you had the new teacher academy, and everyone's been working really, really, really hard, I know. And I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone for their hard work this summer. And it's all going to be great this Thursday when we welcome back all the students. So, and I also wanted to give a shout out really quick that North is celebrating 100 years, and that weekend is fast approaching on, I believe it's September 9th and September 10th, or wait, do I have my dates right? It's that weekend. Friday will be the homecoming parade, the game that night, and then that Saturday of that weekend are the tours of the school. So just a reminder to everyone that it's 100 years. That's a big deal. So anyway, that's all.
That's great. Mr. Stratton?
Thank you for the presentations today. Again, thank you to those who spent the time on our behalf negotiating during the IBB process. So appreciate that and being able to vote on that today. I'm going to give a brief update on this other hat that I wear that sort of overlaps that. In my role on the Capers board, I had the opportunity to spend 3.5 days at a national workshop with other pension trustees and to sit at the table across from folks that oversee the Texas pension, the California pension, the New York pension, and we just shared notes about how's your state, how's our state. And the other colleague from Kansas and I came away from that conference thinking, we're in a pretty good spot. So I wanted to share that because there's a lot of people in this room that have a vested interest in Capers, and say that with the $1 billion plus that the legislature allocated towards Capers this year on top of the regular funding goes a long way to that. When I talk to our peers again in other states, they look at us with envy. They say, boy, what we could do with an extra $1 billion to help fund the fund. We're not fully funded yet. Capers is in the mid-70% towards total funding, but you don't have to go back very far to where we were only 50% funded. So I think it's come a long way. So I just wanted to share that as well because I think that's very important that we offer this great work environment as employers here, but equally something to transition to when they retire, and Capers will be there for them. So I want to share that too.
Brad, can I ask, what would it take to take us from the 70% to the 100%? What does that dollar figure look like?
It's a lot of complicated math, but boy, I would say multiple billions. Okay. In the tune of maybe 20 plus billion. 20 billion. At least, and begin, you have to remember this is projections that go out for 40, 50 years because of the folks that are just starting in the system. We're making sure the funding's there for them for retirement too.
Thank you. All right. I think I'll close it out by sharing one of the events I had the opportunity to participate on behalf of the board was the SMAC PTA School of Instruction. And I was joined by Dr. Hubbard and Mr. Mike Brewer from Lenexa Hills. And that was great to see all of our PTA leaders come together to kind of have a little professional development for the kickoff for the year. And so just a shout out to our parents who are provide that additional support for student learning. It's incredibly valuable. And congratulations again to Shawnee Mission East, Broken Arrow, and Mill Creek for their National PTA School of Excellence recognition. And with that, I believe it concludes our meeting, and we will adjourn again August 22nd. All right, thanks, everybody. It was a good meeting.